Good evening and welcome to Health is Wealth. This show is brought to you by CAN TV and the Chicago Chapter National Black Nurses Association. The Chicago Chapter National Black Nurses Association meets the second Saturday of each month from 4 to 6 p.m. at the Lutheran School of Theology, 1100 East 55th Street, from 4 to 6 p.m. If you want to contact us, please contact us at 773-792-7222. I'm Janice Henry. I'm your host for today. And today, as a guest, I have Dr. Sandeep. He's a researcher at Loretto Hospital, and we're going to be talking about clinical trials. So, Sandeep, welcome to the show, and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing.
Thank you, Janice. Thank you for this opportunity.
You're welcome.
My name is Sandeep Medlucheruvu. Sandeep Medlucheruvu, that's what people say. So I finished my medical school back from India. Then I had some clinical training in India. Then I came here. I trained in psychiatry, and I've been after my training in psychiatry, I've been associated with various clinical trials, and research and medical education has been primary interest for me. And so as a resident, I was involved in National Institute of Mental Health trials, and where we participated in trials for especially schizophrenic population. We were doing study, it's a partner study. It looked at genetic variation among schizophrenic population. We were looking at cognitive differences in various types of schizophrenia and genes involved. And then I participated in bipolar disorder, geriatric bipolar disorder study. We were looking at differences in the way elderly patient population would respond to different medications. Then I was also involved in a clinical trial for a antipsychotic medication in again schizophrenic patient population. So with my interest in research, Loretto Hospital has given me an opportunity to lead this endeavor for Loretto Hospital. So I'm director for clinical research, and that has been my passion. And so far we have been successful in getting various clinical trials, and we have been enrolling patients in various clinical trials. Currently we have around 7 clinical trials. That's what we are doing.
Okay. And whereas the Chicago Chapter National Black Nurses Association is not specifically endorsing any clinical trial, if you'd like to see the list of trials that the National Black Nurses Association is involved in, please visit our website, nationalblacknursesassociation.com, and see some of the trials that our association is involved with. But as a nurse, and I think that it is important that we have a conversation about clinical trials, and you feel free to call in 312-738-1060 if you have any questions of me or of Sandeep about clinical trials. But we're just going to try and go over some of the basics of clinical trials so that people get a better understanding of what clinical trials are and what they hope to achieve. And then we'll have some specific information about some of the trials that are going on at Loretto Hospital. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to ask you is, what is a clinical trial?
Clinical trial is like an experiment. Okay, it's an experiment in which there is an intervention, and we observe the changes in people. Means we for a disease or for a condition, patient's condition, we give a medication, and then we observe what changes it would bring upon on the disease process itself. and it not only involve medications, it can also involve devices that we can use to see how it would affect patient's physiology and body function.
I'm not quite sure that I like the word experiment. I don't want people to think that clinical trials are experiments. It's not really an experiment. It's
It's an intervention.
okay, an intervention.
It's an
Okay, so-
intervention.
okay.
It's an intervention to see how our body physiology can the pathology can be removed and physiology can be improved. Means functioning can be improved and disease can be eliminated through this process. That's the whole idea behind this, and improve the patient outcomes.
Right, and it is important to know that clinical trials involve more than just medicine, that they do involve devices and other things. Okay, so when you if I decide to participate in a clinical trial, I myself happened last week to try and participate in a trial, but I was excluded from the trial. So I don't know why.
That's
Yeah.
That's really interesting that you touch upon that topic, because we see various kinds of patients in this process. So some people want to participate and they cannot participate because they do not meet the inclusion criteria, or they have something in the exclusionary criteria that they cannot be included in the study. Some people don't want to participate because even though they qualify for the study, they meet all the inclusion criteria and they don't have any exclusionary criteria, but they don't want to participate in the study because probably they don't have a proper understanding of what the entire goal is to conduct these trials. Yeah.
So basically, maybe that gets to my next question of who can participate in a trial.
Okay.
So you do have to meet criteria to participate in a trial, and you're either included or excluded
That's
from
right.
the trial.
That's right. So first of all, you need to have that particular condition on which we are trying to use this interventional study, right? So you should have a diagnosis. Say, for example, let me take an example of heart failure. So you need to have heart failure. That is a primary criteria for you to participate. Then you need to be within a particular age group, because certain medications, when you are trying to see if they are going to be effective in patient population, you want to include only certain age group where you want to administer this drug, because beyond that age group, probably the body physiology will be so much varied that it would not be generalizable to the population. Means if I'm doing on elderly people or on children, probably I might not be able to generalize to adult population.
So what happens if I don't have heart failure, for example, but I have a family history of heart failure?
Okay.
Are there at any point trials for people that maybe have family histories of certain diseases but don't actually have the disease themselves right now?
So that boils down to whether you have a risk of developing heart failure. So that is beyond the scope of this discussion. So because there are certain there is nature and nurture, right? How environment and genes. So how environment influences your disease process and how your genes influence the disease process. So sometimes you are more prone to develop that particular disease, or sometimes you are exposed to an environment where you are more prone to develop the disease. So it is important that research can boil down to finding out risk factors that are associated with who is going to develop heart failure disease in case they have family history. So even though you have family history, it doesn't mean that you are going to develop heart failure.
Right.
Because first of all, you need to have hypertension or coronary artery disease. That should be, if it is not treated well, then it can progress to heart failure. Of course, again, it's not only simple heart failure because of that. Heart failure could be because of various reasons. So it will be interesting to see what can we do to prevent development of heart failure in those who have genes who can develop heart failure in the future.
So tell me, what are some of the benefits of participating in a clinical trial?
There are first and foremost benefits of participating in clinical trial is basically getting proper help that you need to improve your health, right? So it is to improve your health outcomes. You are participating in this trial. It also helps in advancement of medicine, because any medication that you see currently that is there out there in the market, let it be as a hypertensive medication, antihypertensive, or oral hypoglycemic agent that we use for diabetes. So for hypertension, diabetes, heart failure, whatever drugs that are there in the market have already gone through this system, gone through this process of clinical trial, and so they have given this to various patients who suffered from those disorders to see how it improved their outcomes, and that's when FDA has approved these medications to be released into the market. So that's the process of basically getting approved and things like that.
Okay, so tell me, what are some of the risks of being a part of a clinical trial? Or are there any risks?
It's like any intervention. If you are participating in a clinical trial, it's an interventional study. So you have never taken this medication, even though we have given in say 10,000 other people. Probably you might respond differently to this medication. So that unknown factor will always be there when you are taking a new medication. So, but sometimes before they even do the human trials, they actually have completed animal trials. We do bench trials where we are actually administering these medications to different animals to see how it is going to affect the animal's physiology, and then we extrapolate those findings onto people, saying that first of all onto healthy volunteers. So there are different phases of clinical trials. In the first phase, basically we recruit healthy volunteers mostly to see whether it is safe to administer this medication or not. Then next one is phase 2, where we are trying to see safety and efficacy of medication. Means how it is affecting the human body and how it is changing the physiology. And then in phase 3, we are actually seeing mostly efficacy. In a larger group of people, patient population, we're going to recruit, and we're going to see how it really affects the disease process. And at the end of phase 3, we basically FDA approves, thinking when we show that actually this drug is both safe and efficacious. That's when Food and Drug Administration basically approves these medications which are there in the trials. Okay. And in phase 4 is where we are actually doing surveillance, post-marketing surveillance, where we are actually seeing how this we are continuing to follow up on whether what kind of side effects patients will develop when they are continuing to take these medications. Till the time it is there in the market, we are supposed to do the post-marketing surveillance.
Okay. So if I join a clinical trial, who's in charge of my health care while I'm in the clinical trial?
Okay, that's a good question you ask. Usually, many physicians, every physician is a scientist, right? We are all scientists, and your physician could choose to participate in a clinical trial as a principal investigator, or he could be a sub-investigator in a trial, or otherwise, say if you have a doctor, if you're seeing a doctor, a primary care physician in your clinic, okay, and you choose to go to a hospital or an academic center where they are doing these clinical trials, you will be participating in the clinical trial under a principal investigator, a physician who will be administering the drug, but you will go back to your primary care physician for your continuity of care. So your continuity of care is never going to be interrupted.
Compromised. Okay.
Yeah. And so you are only under the principal investigator of that academic center or the community hospital for the length of that trial. Then you will again go back to your primary care physician. And even during this trial, you will continue to see your primary care physician for your further care.
Okay. How long do clinical trials normally last?
Clinical trials last anywhere from few weeks to few months. Okay. So the smallest trials could be up to like 6 to 8 weeks, and trials can go up to 2 years, about 24 months. Some trials can last for up to 6 or 5 to 10 years.
Okay. So when I'm participating in a clinical trial, I'm still taking the regular medicine that I take, and I'm still seeing my regular doctor and doing the things that I normally do.
Yeah, as long as it is allowed in that particular trial protocol, you'll continue to do what you have been doing. And it depends upon the trial, right? Whether you will be, whether you continue to take these medications. Most of the trials will allow for you to continue taking your medications.
Okay.
And again, inclusion and exclusion criteria varies from a clinical trial to another clinical trial. Some clinical trials do not want you to have certain diseases before you can enroll into this study. Okay. Some clinical trials do not want you to take certain medications. Okay. So it all depends upon the inclusion criteria and exclusion criteria for that particular trial.
Okay. So feel free to give us a call if you like, 312-738-1060. If you have any questions about clinical trials, I'm going to invite you to go to the National Black Nurses Association website and again look at some of the trials that we're involved with and get some of your questions answered if you have any questions.
Well, you also asked me what benefit does it have for the patient, right? I just started that, and I think I did not completely answer that.
Okay.
Apart from advancement of medicine and improving your patient care, it also will narrow this gap of health disparities that are existing, prevalent in our communities. It improves the access to health care. So bringing in cutting edge technology and treatment options for the patients to their doorsteps, it's very important. Sometimes people don't get, especially ethnic minorities, do not get access to all this cutting edge technology, and some of these clinical trials make that feasible. So therefore, they close that gap in disparities and improve patient outcomes. And apart from that, patients who participate in these trials usually get compensated for their time that they are, and it is totally voluntary. You can choose to participate. You can choose to withdraw from the study whenever you want to. So it's not binding for you to continue in the study. But if you continue and complete the study, it is going to be of meaningful value for the people who are actually observing the changes that happen in your disease process when you are on the study. So,
Another thing is, like you said, a lot of minorities don't participate in clinical trials. Sometimes it's because they're not asked to participate in clinical trials. Sometimes it's because they don't really understand everything that's involved in a clinical trial, and people don't really sit down and explain, what the clinical trial is and what the benefits of being in a clinical trial is. I know for a fact that most medication is tested on middle-aged Caucasian men. And if I'm an African American woman, that's not really going to help me that much. So we need all kind of people to participate in clinical trials.
That's true. That's true. You touch upon a very important topic. It's a hot topic amongst research community and clinical trials. For many years, ethnic minorities have been underrepresented in clinical trials, but the trends are changing. Government is taking initiative to enroll more, reach out to more ethnic minorities. And Office of Minority Health is, for example, they are doing efforts to educate the patient population from ethnic minorities to participate in these research trials, because it should be who we recruit into these studies should be a true representation of general population. So whatever is the ethnic minorities, African Americans or Asians or Native Americans, if we see however they are represented in the general population should be represented in the clinical trials. So far, we have about 14% of African Americans are participating in these clinical trials all across the board, and about 6% of Asians and 1% of Native Americans are involved in this. So if you take 100 people who are recruited, who are enrolled into a study, there could be 14 African Americans, 6 Asians, and 1 Native American. Rest are Caucasians, or non-Hispanic whites. So this is the ethnic minority breakdown. And all this data is published on FDA websites. And so in order to narrow this gap, we have to first of all reach out to communities. We need to do community engagement, and we need to educate the patient population regarding the need for enrolling into these studies, because it is important that your participation is very important, because it is going to improve the health outcomes for ethnic minorities when you participate in these studies. And it also is a tremendous benefit to your disease condition, and apart from that, it will be a true representation of the population, entire population.
Okay. So for some clinical trials, there is some compensation during different portions of the trial. So tell me about informed consent.
Okay. So to talk about informed consent basically is explaining what this trial is. Okay. So then when explaining, so they will tell you exactly what will happen during this trial. Okay. What is this drug, and why is it being given to you, and whether you have any rights. So this is being totally voluntary for participation. Okay. And apart from that, we also talk about benefits and risks of participating in this trial.
Okay.
And
So thank you. I wanted to get this flyer up so that people could see a little bit about the trials that are going on at Loretto Hospital. It's for sickle cell, Crohn's disease, heart failure, ulcerative colitis, pericarditis, low testosterone, and agitation. let's have your office phone number so that people can be in touch with you.
Yeah, it is 773-854-5001.
Okay.
That is my office phone,
Okay.
and I can give you my that is my office extension basically.
Okay.
And apart from that, I have a research department phone.
Okay.
That is 773. 312-639-7871. I repeat,
Okay.
312-639-7871.
Okay. So thank you for coming in and talking about the research project. You can reach the Chicago Chapter National Black Nurses Association at 773-792-7222. We will be back the fourth Tuesday of next month. Thanks for tuning in.